Welcome back, everyone, to Unhoused and Unfiltered. We are now on episode number 9. It's hard to believe we've been at this for almost 10 episodes. Like, I feel like once we hit that decade, that'll be like the woohoo
Yeah.
moment.
And people are liking us or subscribing. We're getting momentum. We hit the top 100 under the top 100 in the Apple Podcast nonprofit. And I think it's really important. And I'm so excited with how well it's being received. It really shows me that people really want to know the truth about what's going on for folks. And they're hungry for a more nuanced view than what we're seeing from from the administration about what it's like to be homeless.
Yeah, and I think homelessness, you've heard me say this 1,000 times that there are 33,000 unhoused individuals in the state of Michigan. That's 33,000 stories. There's 33,000 reasons that they're homeless. And I think a podcast like this and why you and I were so excited to start this is that it really is putting those stories out there, showing that it is a very diverse community. There's thousands of reasons people are unhoused. There, the economic challenges, the environmental challenges, the ability just to afford a place to rent, a place to live. You have bad decisions in somebody's life. There's domestic violence. So there's just thousands, and I think we're really trying to highlight that as we talk. But we can do this because people are members of MICA. So if you aren't a member, go become a member of MICA. Go to our website, myhomeless.org, and go to our become a member of MICA. That allows Sarah and I to do our job every week and to bring these podcasts to you. Again,
Absolutely.
I'm Nick Cook. I'm the director of public policy for the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness, and I'm, as always, joined by my colleague.
Sarah Rennie, Director of Advocacy and Engagement. I'm really excited to be here. And like you said, Nick, people's engagement with this allows us to continue our work. It also brings a really human face to the folks that we serve. And I'm excited because this particular guest we have today is works for a nonprofit that's very important to me personally. As you know, I'm an attorney. I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of different kinds of cases, a lot of complex litigation. But I've always been and deeply honored to work with nonprofits that are small, lawyers that are giving back because they choose to, and nothing fits that bill like street democracy. I think it's important to know because people are often like, what do lawyers have to do with the price of tea in China? There's a whole sort of group of nonprofit lawyers who don't make money, much money at all, who spend their lives trying to make the world a better place. And it's really important to understand that our justice system is not set up for poor people. I dream of a world where justice wasn't dependent on your income or where you lived or your race or ethnicity, or your immigration status, but that's not where we're at. And so there's these groups of attorneys throughout the country that choose to spend their lives and their talent working for a better legal system, a better constitution, working for justice. Street Democracy is a group of really sophisticated lawyers who have come together. They have a ton of experience with poverty. They're choosing to do this. The founder is Georgetown graduate, and they are focused on making sure that one bad thing that happens to someone legally doesn't make sure to be a life sentence of poverty. So what we know is a giant portion of Detroit is uninsured, and many folks can't afford speeding tickets. And what happens, right, if you can't afford to pay your ticket? Nick, do you know what happens if you don't pay your speeding ticket?
Counselor, I'm going to say you get a bench warrant.
You get a bench warrant, you get arrested, you then end up in jail with a bunch of other fines and fees where you or I probably would have been like, ugh, I didn't know I was going 40 and a 35. right? So something that simple can really make just create a huge barrier, and you end up with fines and fees, and eventually you end up without a license. We are a driving state. That means it's harder to get to your job. So, because of all that, street democracy works to change those systems to try to get equality for folks who can't afford it. And one of the premier work that they do is they operate a street court where the judge comes through the Capuchin soup kitchen, and instead of saying you have to pay a fine, homeless folks determine what they want to do on a plan that might help them to make their lives better. And if they finish that plan, then their case is dismissed. The vibe is so much different. If you ever have an opportunity to attend street court, you should. It's very different than regular court. So all that to say, we have a staff attorney from Street Democracy, Felicity Till, who has been kind enough to come and speak with us.
Welcome, Felicity. I just want to give everybody a little bit of your background before we really get into this conversation. Felicity is an advocate and attorney who has dedicated their career to providing support to survivors of gender-based violence within the state of Michigan. They believe in challenging legal power structures that protect violence through an intersectional examination of the needs of the communities in which we live. They believe the greatest agent of change comes from within communities through grassroots efforts and by building connections with one another while catering to their introverted sensibilities. They live in Lansing with their fiance and their matching black cat and dog. We can talk pets all you want. It'll be a great conversation, especially when you have a cat and dog, mass hysteria, all living together under one roof. Sorry, I had to show my age there with
That's
that.
actually one of my favorite quotes. You can say it anytime.
When not fighting for survivors, they enjoy riding and training horses with a focus on working with off the track thoroughbreds. She's a graduate of Western Michigan, has her law degree from Michigan State University. They are a board member of the Salas Center in Lansing, Michigan. Felicity, thank you for being here. Can you tell me a little bit about your transition from domestic violence attorney to your work with the homelessness and street democracy?
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Um, Domestic violence, as we know, is at its corner a housing related issue. When I was working in the pure domestic violence field, often housing was one of the hardest things for our clients to attain. Also, access to housing and access to freedom of movement. That's a huge thing. And my work at Street Democracy builds upon these principles by addressing the root cause of homelessness, which often for women, domestic violence is one of the primary factors for homelessness. And then I've found that in this work, I'm able to make a large difference in individuals' lives by creating a path forward for them by forgiving these past wrongs. And it allows me to address all types of people and address the root causes of the homelessness or them not having their driver's license. And then in my work, I've always wanted to learn more about the criminal legal system. I come from a legal aid background where I was doing a lot of civil work in landlord tenant and family law. And I really was often adjacent to the criminal legal system while not actually advocating within it. So I really welcome the opportunity to come on board Street Democracy and work within the criminal legal system and try to find a new way of helping folks get through that system and getting them back on the road, getting them back housed. And I've really been enjoying learning this new area.
Thanks, Felicity. You know I love street democracy. You know I love and respect all the attorneys who are spend their lives as unsung heroes, making less than probably your student loan payment requires. But I do want people to understand street court is part of street democracy, but I want folks to understand all of what street democracy is trying to accomplish, including street court. Can you kind of build on my introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. So we operate primarily from a functional justice model, which means that community, behavioral science, human-centric design, law, and tools work together rather than in opposition to create a system where justice is the default, rather than something that is only accessed by the rich and powerful. We don't just propose a model. So we don't just say, this is how justice should be done. Um, we actually practice that model in our work with the community through our direct service work. So, our flagship project, as you indicated before, is serving as defense counsel for Street Outreach Court Detroit. Um, and then where we uh, assist individuals who are homeless by having them complete an action plan. And that action plan addresses the root cause of their circumstances and addresses their housing, health, and income and connects them with community resources that address their specific need. It is always tailored to that specific individual. And that's something that we really believe in street democracy, is not pushing people through a preordained system. We actually tailor everything to the individual and we provide them with a reasonable path forward. Rather than having them pay fines and fees to get their tickets dismissed, we have them actually invest in themselves, which is an investment in the community because each individual is a community member. So we are investing in the community by having these individuals invest in themselves. And it also helps to teach them how to deal with their tickets, how to connect with resources. So we're not just, requiring them to do these things. We're helping them learn for themselves how to advocate for themselves. And not to say that these individuals can't. Most of the time they they're really good at advocating for themselves, but we're providing them with the tools and resources to better themselves and to better the community rather than just leveraging fines and fees.
That makes so much sense to me that we, instead of putting people in jail or charging them money that they can't pay, we're reinvesting that time and effort into what the folks actually need and thereby building a better community. And then it's my understanding so all of that is amazing. Um, you take that information from and that work, listening to the community, and try to make systems change. Um, for what you're seeing that's going wrong that just doesn't make legal sense. I can't imagine a better model. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so we also have other projects. So we're also working to spread our functional justice model to sentencing in courts in the Metro Detroit area that are outside of 36th District. So we work with some of our graduates to take care of these tickets and make arguments in courts for sentences that follow that functional justice model. We also provide technical assistance to homelessness courts that are working within that functional justice model in Michigan and even in other states. We also work on providing justice to those affected by property tax foreclosures, and we try to help folks avoid foreclosures, or we are also working to help folks obtain proceeds from their foreclosure sale. Um, and
Again,
so,
trying to give folks tools on keeping whatever resources they can.
exactly. And so we're trying to, stabilize the community by investing in the individuals.
I that's I feel like that should be the best tagline yet that I've heard for street democracy. I just want to turn this over to Nick because I also know, and particularly our shore is particularly concerned about the plight of veteran homeless. That you have a specific one. I want to highlight that you're working directly with an individual and meeting their needs. So it's not a one size fit all, and you have a very specific project. Around veteran homelessness. Nick, did you have questions about that or?
Veterans are such a, myself as a veteran, I can say this is, we're a very special population. Sometimes we can be hard headed, sometimes we can be very stubborn. So I want to talk about what you're seeing, just kind of, highlight the work that Street Democracy is doing. So can you talk to that a little bit, Felicity?
Yeah, so we with veterans we provide actually we call it street concierge. We provide which is where we provide concierge style legal services to veterans who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, which means we obtain referrals directly from the shelters themselves who get them from the individuals. And so we're not having folks run around to all different legal aid models to try to get criminal assistance, to try to get assistance with their landlord-tenant claim, try to get assistance with their VA benefit claims. So we assist with evictions, driver's license restoration, criminal expungements, VA benefit claims, and discharge upgrades. And we will provide that legal representation for one person in all of their areas that they need. So it means that a veteran only has to do one intake to get all of their needs met rather than navigating the complex silos of the legal aid system.
I love that because folks don't want to have to drive from place to place, tell their story twice. Um, what do you think, Nick?
And I think that's great. And I want to kind of go back to a thing that Felicity mentioned about the discharge upgrade. Could you explain to our listeners? To me, I made the connection of how that impacts a veteran, but could you kind of make that connection for those of our listeners on what that discharge upgrade, what barriers that puts in place?
Yes, so that primarily relates to how veterans or how an individual gets discharged their from their service. So what we do and what our attorney Charles Hobbs is the one who focuses primarily on veterans, and we help maybe go back and clear up what may be a dishonorable discharge where they don't have that level where that opens them up um to certain problems, and then we may be able to upgrade it to a different discharge level which opens different avenues for them.
So I
And,
know,
and
oh, go ahead.
that, and that that is great because I think a lot of people think a veteran's a veteran. In the eyes of the VA, when you have a dishonorable discharge or other than honorable, there are a lot of barriers to access the VA system. The VA has made strides in the last decade and a half about mental health challenges, people getting a dishonorable discharge, being able to access mental health services. Um, you know, there's been the LGBTQ community when they were discharged under the old "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" policy, received less than honorable, which then put them or a general discharge, which also cut down their access to resources and put barriers in place. So really want to highlight that service that you all provide to our those that have served this nation is really important.
Yeah, I
So,
just wanted to echo because I think sometimes people are like, well, dishonorable discharge. They probably got in some sort of massive fight with their commanding officer. I know from my family, I had a family member who was a naval in the Navy, and he was serving in a submarine, and he was on year two under under the ice caps in the Arctic, and he developed severe depression and claustrophobia, and he was unable to serve, and at that time he was dishonorably discharged when we were able to advocate for him, which is a huge deal for services and your ability to access veteran resources and obtain things that you've actually sort of earned. Um, when we were able to advocate for him, we were able to change his discharge status, and made a world of difference. And I think that the VA is getting better on mental health, but they're not entirely there. So it's not always an unsympathetic person who's dishonorably discharged.
right, and I do want to highlight that too. Thank you, Sarah. I had a friend of mine that saw some very hard days in combat. Came back to his post. Tried to die by suicide, and he received a dishonorable
Ugh.
discharge. And it took years for him to get that upgrade. So again, it's, he had the ability and the resources to do that, but to apply for that discharge upgrade and was eventually awarded it. But um,
Having an
for the
attorney, if you're
yeah,
homeless and poor,
yeah,
you're probably saving lives. You're certainly making sure people are getting the health care they need. Nick can talk to me more, but it's my understanding there's a lot of things you can't access with the dishonorable, and that alone makes your work just incredibly important, in addition to everything else.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and it's so important because while veterans do face very similar problems to general homelessness, um, they have a lot of issues with access to resources, but they have a lot higher rates of mental health issues, higher rates of PTSD, depression, anxiety. The suicide rate is astronomical. And so when working with the homeless, you are all with folks who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, you're very often going to encounter veterans. And so that's why we make them a priority within street democracy, and really work to reduce barriers and make sure that they can get access to the information that they need.
So I want to say, I think your work is so important. If somebody wanted to donate to Street Democracy, or, you know, goodness, a funder was listening and wanted to give you extra money, how would they get a hold of you?
So you can, the easiest way to donate is to go to our website, streetdemocracy.org, and click the big orange donate button. You
There
can't
you go.
miss it. Otherwise, you can also reach out to me, Felicity, Felicity, at streetdemocracy.org. And I will make sure your donation gets where it needs to.
And I want to add, your agency is particularly dependent on donations and small funders, because it's my understanding you've made the decision not to take federal or state grants so that you don't have any strings attached to the money. Can you talk a
Abs
little bit about that?
Absolutely. We do not take any of these major state or federal grants that often include a lot of restrictions. So a lot of other legal aid organizations have a lot of restrictions on their funding and these restrictions end up putting in place barriers for folks, or they restrict what the attorneys can and cannot do within their representation, or they require a huge amount of paperwork that we just are not able to take on and provide the level of legal services that we want to provide. So therefore, it's really important for folks who are interested in our mission and who are interested in our model to support us financially, so that we can keep these barriers low, keep doing what we're doing, and keep providing this level of direct service work that is unencumbered by funder requirements.
And I just want to follow up. You worked for federally funded legal services. It's my understanding there's just a lot more freedom to meet the client where they're at if you don't take the federal money. Is that your experience?
That has been my experience thus far, absolutely. And we also, we have a lot of abilities to provide technical assistance and also to, advise on policy, in ways that we're not able to do if we accept federal money.
Yeah, Felicity, before we sign off with you today, I wanted to go back to when you made your opening comments about freedom of movement. And we know that there has been an increase push on criminalization of homelessness. And believe on on our first podcast, I talked about the individual who was fined for sleeping in a park in the city of Lansing, and his fees and fines showed up at my office because the mailing address said homeless. So do you see a lot of those challenges where the individual didn't even know they had fines or fees or tickets out there?
Oh, absolutely, all the time. It's a huge part of our work. One of the things that we actually have folks do as in their action plans is actually go to the Secretary of State and get a printout of all the things that are holding up their license. And a lot of times people are aware, but a lot of the times they're like, this is a 10-year-old ticket from 10, 20, 15-year-old ticket that I didn't even know was you know, I didn't even know I had a warrant. I didn't even know. So that's something that occurs a lot. And when we have one of the things that Street Outreach Court to Trade does is we actually teach people the system, how to find where they are or how to find where tickets are, how to reach out and take care of those tickets, how to interact with the court system. So we're not just you know, it, we're not just taking care of those tickets, we're teaching them the skills that they need to, make sure the courts are updated with your contact information. You need to do that for all of your courts. We teach them how to do these things and we provide them with access to tools um, so that they know where they're at.
That is great. I really appreciate that. And is there any before you sign off, is there anything else you want to add for our viewers to know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the functional justice model that I've been talking about is not just something that is practiced by lawyers, judges, and those in power. It thrives on community and changing community attitudes. So folks who are listening who are not able to donate, we totally understand. They can still practice our principles by how you interact with your neighbors and how you seek justice. And so, through a dynamic shift in community ideals towards individuals in poverty and folks who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, we can create a more just world.
That's amazing. I appreciate just the positive, practical, and then also community-based work that you're doing. It's really, incredibly inspiring, and we appreciate your commitment. And we hope that you'll come back at a later date and update us and tell us how things are going. And I hope folks are going to continue to support your work. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Felicity.
Bye.
It's great to have this positive work. I do want to highlight the fact that Street Democracy chose, because of all the nonsense that goes on with federal funding, not to take federal funding. So they all make very little money, but are doing great work. I have to say, the more we do this work, this podcast, the more I see, flexible, non restricted money as being part of the solution to some of the work we're doing.
You're exactly right. We need nonprofits like Street Democracy. We have a lot of great different organizations out there. We talked to Khadijah Erickson, her nonprofit with the Tenant Resource Center. We are seeing a lot of unbelievable work done by people that just don't have the
The
funding.
resourcing, and they're grassroots and they're solution oriented and they're sophisticated folks. Um, which goes to sort of my pitch of like this, our state hasn't really invested in the same way as some other states in homeless services. I know you've been working on that.
Yeah, that's one great thing that we saw come out of the Senate budget, out of the state Senate was Section 406 out of the labor and employment opportunity budget was 30 million set aside to get at housing first, to really have that conversation that the state has not had in a long time on homeless services. But again, unless it has been a priority of an individual member of the legislature, homeless advocacy agencies, homeless service providers just have not been a focus of this. And I'm not trying to say that it's homeless service providers or housing. It's
No, no,
both.
it's obviously we have to have both. It's just such a practical answer that we have to have both things. People may think I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth saying like street democracy didn't want all the restrictions of state and federal funding, so they went on their own. I think the solution isn't that we don't support them one, please donate to them. But two, it's not that we don't support them with state funding. It's just we make the state funding a lot less hard to use. And I know that I will say, and I want to celebrate this particular legislature, that has been part of their work is that if this money is able to go through, it is more accessible and more, you're able to do more quickly with it, and it is less restricted than some of the HUD dollars.
And I do want to also talk about that we've across the board, Sarah, we've talked about my street outreach before. We're continuing to see the number of individuals on the street increase, the number of individuals that we've never seen before increase. And it's with the economic instability that we have right now, it is, we're going to see it get worse before it gets better.
And I do want to say it's not all doom and gloom because we've interviewed some incredible people. We have an opportunity with the way things are to really take a look and do things differently instead of looking at people as part of we had the young woman in our podcast number 8 who talked about youth homeless as being part of a checkbox. Instead of looking at homeless systems like that, we have an opportunity to do things better and differently. So I encourage and I'm encouraged and appreciate the state being willing to look at that and look at housing first and stand in their values to really think about how we want to treat our neighbors. And that, as I always say, the 40% of us who are living paycheck to paycheck. We have
And
an
I
opportunity to come together.
and I think you were really seeing it. I saw a uh, story this weekend on one of the weekend news shows talking about the stock market crash of 29, that the the stock market isn't a really good indicator of the actual economy, the worry, the concerns that people have. Yes, the stock market continues to go up, but the person living day to day has to stretch their dollar further. Look at the rising gas prices, the rising cost of food, the rising cost of rent. So, we really need to invest in systems now so that when um, we have this crisis of unhoused individuals, loss of the labor market, that we're prepared. And we do need those investments in affordable housing. We do need the investments in housing choice vouchers. We do need investments in Medicaid. All these things will keep people safe and out of harm's way. And I think that's a conversation we don't have enough across the board and in the state, is that we have to look at things differently now. We can't just say, oh, the COC is going to take care of everything, or Medicaid is going to take care of all of our medical needs. We need to really kind of have a conversation on what the social safety net looks like.
Well, and I love that last line as we just tie up of investment in the person is investment in the community. It's also investment in the state, right? So if we shift the paradigm to looking at functional sentencing as a whole or looking at individuals as a whole, let's invest in each other as a way of creating community, then we'll be stronger at the end of this.
Yeah, and Michigan has been on the forefront of this.
No, I love Michigan. I'm a proud
I'm
Michiganian.
Michigander, but we'll
Yeah.
we'll we'll, we'll agree to disagree on that one. But as she was talking about this, I thought about my first couple of years in the legislature, in the state legislature, when we worked on driver responsibility fees. This put an undue burden on a lot of people that lived paycheck to paycheck, that just could not get out and get a free and clear license to drive to their job.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a great thing to highlight what street democracy is doing. It's removing some of those barriers that keep people from um, really becoming a member of society and being able to contribute on a daily basis, versus somebody that lives on the margins of society and that that's that other person over there.
Exactly. So I think as we, move forward, please remember if to our listeners, if you have something you want to hear, please let us know. And please always remember to like and subscribe and share. I am grateful every day to be doing this job, doing it with a great coworker, and interviewing these amazing people. Nick?
Yeah. And don't forget, if you're not a member of MICA, go to myhomeless.org. Go become a member of MICA because it allows Sarah and I to do our job every day to be able to bring this podcast to you and tell these amazing stories about the amazing people out there doing the hard work every day on the streets. But thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Hopefully we'll break the top 50. I'm
That's
keeping my
right.
fingers crossed. We look forward to bringing episode 10 to you next time as we hit the decade mark and and see where we go from there. So thank you, Sarah,
Thanks,
and
Nick. Have a
thank you
good
to
night.
all of our listeners. Bye.
Bye.